May I please welcome Anusha and her team to make the first presentation on Chara Assertion of Heritage. Anusha, over to you.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Jigna. So just wanted to clarify that I will be making the presentation on behalf of the Praxis team. Um, so hello everyone and greetings to all of you from India. So I'll be talking today about our exploration of questions related to identity, culture and heritage of the marginalized and how they are defined through mainstream notions of legality and morality. To do this, I will be drawing upon our experiences of working with the Chara community of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, which is a state in the western part of India and was also introduced to you during Jigna's presentation. I would like to begin first of all by acknowledging the incredible work that is being done on the ground by the Bodhan Theatre in Charanagar and the National Alliance Group of Denotified Nomadic and Semi-Nomadic Tribes. I would like to especially thank Dakshin and Atish in linking us to the community during and in spite of the pandemic. And last but not the least, I'd like to thank the others who have contributed to this paper, Ishani, Ananya, Vikas, and Nirmita. So let us begin with a little bit of history. The Charas were a nomadic community of performers and hunter-gatherers recruited by the erstwhile Maharajas as foot soldiers to engage in hunting, skinning, plunder, and sometimes in strong arm action. So the Charas were one of the communities of India that has struggled with a colonial legacy that branded them as born criminals. Ekta dwelt quite a bit on this during her presentation, and just to like refresh your memory, I'd just like to add a little bit. So in the 19th century, British administrators were trying to make sense of the country that they were meant to govern. So on the one hand, the vast diversity of India was overwhelming with its strange habits and customs. And on the other, there was the refusal to accept British authority. W.H. Lehman, a British officer who was posted in India in 1831, observed that there had been a considerable number of nomadic tribes who were not part of the British tax net, as they would keep moving places. One way of tying them down was to find ways of restricting their movement. Additionally, these communities seemed to the imperialist eye to be threats who would not be pinned down. Who would not be pinned down, and their commitment to religion, to their tribe, and to various other things was almost incomprehensible. So through a series of legislations in the subsequent decades, the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 was codified, and these laws declared that these communities were born criminals. They used various concepts that were in the that were being talked about around that time, some of which you see on the screen. The law itself was denotified 5 years and 16 days after India became independent in August 1947. But an equally discriminatory law called the Habitual Offenders Act took its place. So overall, the stigmatizing tag of criminality that was introduced then in that period of history has continued to stay with the Charas and with other nomadic and denotified tribes. Close to almost 7 decades, they're still struggling with this. So when we talk about identity and heritage, so identity is an integral part of culture and heritage. It is neither static nor universal. Instead, it is dynamic, it evolves over time and through history as a process of negotiations of the community as well as the individuals within the community, their responses to power. The journey of identity formation is not necessarily a linear one either. So just going into each of these concepts, first of all, we talk about how the identity itself depends upon whose gaze that identity is being talked about from. Is Chara identity, for example, defined by the people belonging to the community, or is it by society they live in? And within this larger society, who are the actors who determine which identity is accepted or imposed? So you see a number of identities that are linked to the Charas that are on the screen, and many of these are ascribed to them by various sections of society, including like media, the administration, etc. The Charas live in Charanagar. a ghettoized area of Ahmedabad, which is a smart city. Within this, the Charanagar is seen as a den of criminals and bootleggers. The police repeatedly raid the locality and harass inhabitants. Newspapers associate Charanagar with breweries, adding that women brew illicit liquor, illicit because Gujarat is a dry state, while the men thieve or steal. Police training until very recently, including sections on identifying how criminal tribes can be identified, and that section included a piece on charas. The chara assertion of identity goes back to reclaim the history that is invisibilized. Several chara leaders that the team spoke to pointed out that the community's role in the independence struggle is conveniently ignored. They point out that with the folk art losing state patronage, one way of earning was lost. Additionally, with the branding of the tribe as a criminal tribe, it became difficult to find proper livelihoods. As a result, the charas used their skills of performance to engage in small-time thieveries for a living. Many of the respondents also note with pride that their women can brew alcohol with jaggery and any fruit or vegetable. So as individuals that embrace these aspects of their identity, resisting mainstream notions of legality and morality. So their response is almost like, yes, I was brought up on the money earned through brewing alcohol or petty thieving. Without it, where would I be? Through this assertion, there is an individual's awareness of one's identity and the realization that it is not subject to those identities that are imposed, those identities of criminality that are imposed on them. So one way of looking at creating an identity is by pursuing, see on the screen. According to a study, there are around 250 lawyers in Charanagar. However, the association with what may be considered as a respectable profession does not necessarily ensure dignity. During one of our exercises at creating digital stories, one of the a young Chara lawyer, she said that she had to spend a night in the lockup on suspicions of theft. Her point was very pertinent. She said, if I, as a lawyer, am not free from this stigma, how will others be? So another respondent noted that Gopi Sardar, he's a two-time winner of the Mr. Gujarat Bodybuilding Championship, has acted in several significant theatre productions, including Badal Sarkar's famous play Spartacus, and talks about how being a chara often becomes associated with very derogatory practice, very derogatory way of treating the community. And for the police also, it is assumed that we are the thieves. It doesn't matter whether we are engineers, lawyers, we're working in factories, we are doing any other kind of work, it doesn't matter. And even within these setups, there is a lot of discrimination that is having to be faced by them. So this process of asserting one's identity therefore involves a constant pushback from the institutions that are staffed by people from various dominant castes who have a mindset against not just the charas and the other denotified tribes, but also from various other caste groups. The second, when we go to identity and talk about whether it's static or dynamic, and one thing is that it is definitely not static. It evolves, and it evolves with changing context. To give you an example, the same year that Ahmedabad got nominated to the UNESCO World Heritage List, Belgium's beer guzzling culture also found a birth at the Global Hall of Fame. However, the same art that is celebrated in one corner of the world is clearly shunned in another corner of the world. However, that does not prevent the charas from owning the skill. The museum that is dedicated to the charas has displays of various tools and instruments that are used to make the alcohol. Interestingly, during the pandemic last year, one of the community leaders, Dakshin Bajrangi, he approached the administration and asking whether the alcohol making skills of chara women could be tapped into for making the much needed sanitizers. In 1998, the literary critic and founder of Bhasha Research and Public Center, G.N. Devi, he set up a library in Charanagar. The library, it was named after Budan Sabar, who was brutally killed in police custody merely because he belonged to one specific tribe, the Sabar tribe. This library, it came to house the history and the aspirations of Chara youth. Through theatre, through this library, the Charas raised awareness about the community's rich history. They converted the library into a museum and a theater space, which brought many children and youth into a journey of self-discovery. A group of youth, including leaders like Bajrange, found a way of expressing their angst. As several plays point out, and the theatre persons themselves note, it was not just a question of acting. The Chara youth were merely representing their own reality before an audience when they started staging plays about the oppression that they faced. So the oppression that they faced was not necessarily the oppression faced just by the Charas. It was representative of the oppression faced by a large class or large group of people. So one of the questions that they raised in their very first play, asking, are we second-class citizens? This question was, again, as I was mentioning, it is not just about the Charas. So it included various other groups, including Dalits, workers, Muslims, women, indigenous people, nomads, and many others who are often treated as second-class citizens and in many cases even invisibilized as non-citizens. Through a recent play that is also up on their website, you can see The Village of the Dead. They talk about the difference between a worker and a human being is very brutally drawn, asking the vital question about whether a person from the working class or a slum has any right to show compassion or has any right to even see oneself as a human being. So not only does theatre provide a platform for raising and resolving social issues, it also creates avenues for alternate career choices. A recent, like a couple of years ago, Praxis had done an interaction with members of nomadic and denotified tribes, and it showed how deeply discrimination is experienced in a range of institutions, starting right from hospitals and schools, which are two most basic institutions where one would expect non-discriminatory treatment. So for marginalized groups, the framing of identity is intrinsically linked to these experiences of discrimination and the negotiations with and the struggles against them. Again, talking about the third point, the identity framing process is not necessarily linear. It follows multiple pathways. So we'll just take you through some of the pathways in the context of the Chara community. So first of all, theatre. Over the last 23 years, Budin Theatre has given voice not just to Chara's own history, but also fought for the rights of other disadvantaged and marginalized groups and issues, a diverse set of issues. They have protested against the eviction of slum dwellers, many of whom belong to nomadic communities. They have staged plays on violence against women, workers, and people from different caste groups. The Budin Theatre has also staged plays as part of police sensitization. They have taken their plays to various spaces, including the establishment, including the academic spaces, including civil society, to raise some of these questions. They have also made films, including films that talks about these issues. The plays that they stage are conscious critique of the oppressive social norms, and they invoke introspection among the audience, and they raise uncomfortable questions, which is what they're meant to do and which is what their goal is. Another way, another pathway that the youth from Charanagar are using is basically the use of podcasts. So during the pandemic, when the world was locked down, the Budhan Theatre found an innovative way to raise the issues faced by the community through the Budhan podcast. It's a GCRF funded initiative. Throughout season 1, they reached out to the community through their language Bhatu, raising awareness about the virus, health-related issues, pandemic-induced challenges to livelihoods, and also paid homage to friends and colleagues who succumbed to the virus. Not only this, in the second season, the podcast focused on other nomadic tribes and their struggles during the pandemic, documenting their livelihoods as well as their challenges and their strife. Another way of reaching out, another way of shaping their identity is language and music. The Charas preserve their own language and music through theatre and through conversations. So like I mentioned, the first 10 episodes on season 1 are all done in the local language of Bantu. And this ensures that the children don't forget the language of their ancestors. During ceremonies and celebrations, there are also songs that are sung in the traditional language. However, given the current DJ culture of playing like film songs and other popular numbers, this is seeing a gradual erosion. So making it all the more essential, the work that Budhan Theatre is doing in this space. So the third aspect is when we talk about, the fourth aspect is when we talk about space in shaping heritage and identity. So one example that we see is the use of space to preserve one's heritage. The settlement, so I'm just quoting, I'm just reading out, like our settlement here, where my father and grandfather have lived, this is my heritage. It is the place where the community elders used to sit. That is our heritage. The graves of our ancestors, where temples were built, our poetry was written, their photographs, our language, all these old stories are our heritage. We owe our education to brewing and deception for shaping up our future. Thus, we consider this equipment too as our heritage.
Anusha, if you can conclude in a couple of minutes.
Sure. So the space of Charanagar is a reservoir of memories for the community that they can go back to. And this is the space that keeps their art forms alive after sedentarization threatened to put an end to their performances. In the context of identity and heritage, Charanagar provides a non-judgmental space that is free from mainstream morals and ethics. It is a rejection of these mainstream narratives in a way. And there is related to this is the desire for a more specific acknowledgement of ownership over land. The Charas have been raising demand for land rights, and there is a hesitation regarding the same. The Charanagar space also offers a sense of collective strength. For example, when some members of the community were arrested after a midnight raid by the police in 2018, the people came together to stand by those who were being victimized. So concluding, I would just try to raise a few questions over here based on the research. These and leave you all with a few questions. So the first and the most important thing is when we are talking about like, does the attempt to celebrate one's non-mainstream identities lead to further stigmatization? What is this trade-off we are talking about? One thing is clear that dominant actors will continue to project and impose a limiting narrative to serve their agenda of exclusion. The second, a nomadic community forcibly settled, a nomadic community that has been forcibly settled found that it still did not manage to get the caste capital for a life of dignity. So can this negotiation of identity be complete without consciously and purposefully dismantling the structures of caste and their self-imposed notions of morality and legality? In pursuit of land, what does land really symbolize? Is it a repository of memory, a tangible past, or a means to claim a new future? And lastly, when we're talking about the community using an art form and innovating with new technology to raise awareness and build narratives not only about themselves, but also of other marginalized groups, can the tag of cultural rights defenders provide Bodhan theatre activists more visibility and more power for their work? And to conclude, each of these are extremely political. They negotiate for an identity and a heritage for a community that faces discrimination and marginalization. One way in which this can be addressed is by at least beginning a process of counting the people belonging to these communities, like what Ekta mentioned as the census. And lastly, the last sentence I would like to close with is that I hope that this will provide further scope for active engagement with the nomadic and denotified tribes. This October 12th, which will be 150 years since the Criminal Tribes Act of 1871 was passed, one hopes that forums like these can raise these issues and can, in a way, can highlight the atrocities of colonial laws and their continuation by an independent Indian state, and make some attempt at least to right some of these wrongs. With that, I would like to stop. Thank you.